really glad to see you here. See a few new faces, so really excited. Um, Welcome to our monthly California Disaster Strategies Coalition networking and organizing meeting. This is a space where we can talk about all things related to disaster preparedness and readiness. It is also a space where you can ask any questions, but most importantly, it's also a place where you can connect with each other and really start to lean into resources, one another as resources. So I'm really glad to be here with you all today. My name is Russell Rawlings. I am the statewide community organizer at California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am a white male wearing a white shirt with have a mustache and green glasses and a white background behind me with California Foundation for Independent Living Centers on it, with all of our programs, including the Disability Disaster Access and Readiness program. I will pass to my wonderful co-host, June.
Hi there, I'm June Kales, and I'm in Los Angeles, and I do work with CFILC as a disability policy consultant contractor, primarily on the topic calls, and my pronouns are she and her. But Russell, you had a third pronoun. What did you say? He, him, and
oh, he, him, and his. It's just
I don't.
Yeah. It's the possessive. I don't.
So mine would be she,
sorry.
Her, she, her, and her.
Hers. Yeah, correct.
You always screw that up. Anyways, yeah, okay. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm wearing a blue shirt and a gray vest and brown gray hair, medium length, and glasses, and have a colorful background of people wearing masks, which conceals my horribly chaotic, messed up office. Back to you.
Great. Let's get some rounds of introductions from everyone. If you don't mind, after you share your name and organization, if you'll share also any connection that you have to this work, and feel free to whatever that might be. I will pass to Aaron.
Okay, my name is Aaron McDonald, and I am with Valley Mountain Regional Center. I am the Emergency Response Coordinator for Valley Mountain Regional Center. Some of you may recognize me. I was formerly with DRAIL, the ILC, Disability Resources, and I was the I was the DDAR manager there. So I switched over to the regional center at the beginning of the year, but recognize the importance of these groups and want to stay connected with all of you as we're still serving individuals in the AFN community during disasters and things and such. So anyway, I think that's it for me.
Adam, June, can you just, I think I know this, but maybe no one else does. Would that be in Fresno? I mean, in Modesto, or where?
Valley Mountain Regional Center. Actually, I'm actually in our San Andreas office today. That's why the thing behind me is blurred out, because there might be people passing behind me who don't want to be on camera. But Valley Mountain Regional Center serves Stanislaus, San Joaquin, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne counties. And we have offices located, our main offices are located in Stockton, with satellite offices in Modesto and San Andreas, where I am today. Similar to DRAIL, but I lost Mariposa County and Alpine when it came to DDAR stuff. So anyway.
Thank you. That helps geographically to know where you are.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Thank you, Aaron. Let's go to Angie.
Hi, I'm Angie. I am with Resources for Independent Living. I'm the disaster preparedness coordinator, and I just started with being the disaster preparedness coordinator back in June. So I'm really looking forward to getting in there and helping people out where they need it.
Welcome, Angie. Let's go to Kelly.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly. I'm with CID, the Center for Independence of Individuals with Disabilities, located in San Mateo. And I am the project coordinator for emergency preparedness events programs.
Alexandra.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Enders. I'm in Missoula, Montana. Had a long interest in emergency preparedness, etc., and go back years with the independent living centers in California. So I'm pleased to be able to sit in on your calls. I also was with FEMA as a disability integration specialist for 7 years. They never let me come to California to work on the wildfires, which I kept asking for, but I've now left so I can talk again, which is great.
Always good to be able to talk. All right, Lisa Austin.
Hi, everybody. This is Lisa. I work for CFILC, and I have been involved in the DDAR program since its onset, and my role has changed a little bit because there's more need for me to be involved in some of the other programs at CFILC. So I am still supporting the DDAR program in a smaller capacity, but always open to helping and supporting others. I currently don't have my camera on, so in the picture that you see there, I am in a blue jacket, actually on my trip in Norway. So I was in a little town in Norway there behind me. So that's the snow that was there when I showed up, even though it was the middle of May. So anyway, pronouns she, her, hers, and yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Asia.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Asia. I'm the new systems change here at Rolling Start Inc. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a, I'll look to my camera so you can see me. Is there a waiting list for that? Or? Okay. I'm a multiracial, bilingual, and how much is the application? Black Mexican. And all my access needs are being made, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks, Asia. For those that may not be as familiar, to help some out, what counties does Rolling Start? What area does Rolling Start serve?
We are with San Bernardino County.
Great, thanks. All right, let's go to Hi.
Good morning, everyone. This is Hi Norman from RICV, Resources for Independence Central Valley. We are located in Fresno, however, we serve counties from Merced all the way down to Kings. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator, and my pronouns are he and him. Glad to see you all.
Hi. Hans.
Hi, my name's Hans Greenwald. I'm the program manager at RAL. Only been on board about 3 months now. Just excited to be here and continue to learn from everyone else and here's some best practices and things like that. Pronouns he and him. Thank you.
And Matthew.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Matthew Estepona. I'm the community organizer with the Marin Center for Independent Living, and I'm going to be doing a lot of emergency preparedness and planning this summer for fire season for Marin CIS. Thanks for organizing this.
Thanks, Matthew. And then here, some more of our support staff. Victor Mendoza is with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor. I am the program coordinator at CFILC. I've been with CFILC for about 8 months now. My pronouns are he, him, and his. and we are in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, and I neglected to mention that if you do need access to captioning, that is available to you at the bottom of your screen on live transcript. You can click that button and get access to your captions if you'd like. These are live captioned, so thank you to our captioner for providing that access. And then finally, Cameron Moore, our Marketing and Communications Manager.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Cameron, pronouns he, him, his. Communication Marketing Manager for the CFILC based out of Sacramento. And I am running the live stream and also listening in too to get more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. All right, so June, I see you've shared some information about the upcoming topic calls. I'm wondering, maybe do you want to share some of that verbally so that that folks might know what's coming up, but also what was our last topic call? So maybe going over the new ones and then talking about what our last topic call was.
Sure thing. Just a reminder, these are on the second Thursday of the month at 10:30 Pacific time. $1 welcome. So in the chat, I posted the topics. So next month on April 12th, when I get that wrong, that's April 14th. April 14th. Is a conversation with Vance Taylor, who's the lead at the Office of Access and Functional Needs, the California Governor's Office on Emergency Services. So it's a good time to get to know Vance, understand what his office does, understand what his staff does, and ask him a bunch of questions that we always have for people at the state level. On May, we have the directors of the partnership, which is a national organization, the only disability-led organization that focuses on people with disabilities and emergencies and disasters. So that will be a good time to understand more about their many programs and their involvement in policy, services, or hotline, all kinds of projects that they oversee. In June, we have a conversation with WID, the World Institute on Disability, related to their emergency and disaster and climate change work, both stateside and internationally. And then in July, we have Lisa, who's on the call, talking about the use of batteries in emergencies and supporting and sustaining our needs, and what's, where are we with batteries? What's working? What needs work? What do we want the technology to look like yesterday, tomorrow, that kind of thing. And then in August, we have Andy Imparato, who's the director of our state, California State Protection and Advocacy Organization. We call it Disability Rights California. And he'll be talking about the Presidential COVID-19 Health Equity Task Force that has finished its work, but it's a look at their final report, what they promised to oversee and attend to ongoing and how that's all going. So you can register for all of these. I included the link, and you can also catch our past calls at just going to YouTube and looking for the CFILC YouTube channel. And to answer your question, Russell, in February and March, we focused on what it takes to build strong relationships with local emergency management departments and organizations focused on emergencies. So that was quite a robust discussion, and you can catch the archive, catch the discussion, as well as the handouts and the slides. And you can do that by going to the YouTube channel. And also we have a Google Docs link for the slides and bios and handouts. And Russell, can you help me to post that link? I didn't put that in my notes.
Absolutely. Let me go run and grab that. I also will point out that Cameron has shared the link to the YouTube channel, which includes previously recorded installments of the topic calls and the networking and organizing calls. I'll turn it back over to you for a minute, June, while I go and grab that link.
Sure, I've got one more announcement. And that is that we are working with a student, and I'll post this at United Spinal, and we're looking at, in the emergency world, there's always a device that we, mobility device users, have a backup device in case we can't access our preferred device, or it's damaged or totaled or whatever. So one of the areas that people are looking at is the more lightweight powered mobility devices that are more easily lifted, carried, folded, that kind of thing. So we want to interview people about what their experiences have been with these devices, because they're not well regulated. And looking at their availability, for example, on Amazon, can be overwhelming. But because they're not backed up by major companies like, Pride or some of the other big mobility device manufacturers, it is more of a gamble in terms of what you get, the quality, how it's repaired. So we really want to interview users as to what their experience has been. So I'll post the call for users in the chat, and maybe we can discuss that further later, or at least you'll have the information. So back to you, Russell.
Thanks, June. The link for the folder is in the chat. All right. Let's see. Thank you, June. I'm curious, does anyone have any initial thoughts about the upcoming meeting? Any feedback? Okay. I see another chat. And Jen, you've shared some of the information about the upcoming opportunity for connecting with United Spinal.
Correct. There's a email address to
correct,
if you're interested. And do I need to voice that? Would that be helpful with the internet?
Yeah, I think it might be. It's a little lengthy, so.
Yeah, well, it just talks about what the interview is, which I've already explained, but anybody who's interested, you should contact Madison, and her email is posted there, but it's MKALSKI at United Spinal, one word, .org. So mkelski at unitedspinal.org. And if you want to post that to some of your lists, that's fine as well.
But and these are specifically use of lightweight powered mobility devices.
Yes.
So that's fascinating, actually. As someone who uses a mobility device that is nowhere near being lightweight, I have seen some of these on the market, but it's interesting. The market for lightweight devices, in my opinion, doesn't seem to cover quite the same range of seating needs in particular. That so that'd be a fascinating conversation. I think it's interesting to. I think it would also be interesting to collect information from people who might have thought about lightweight devices, but just can't seem to find or see the ones that might be most useful for them. So we're hesitant to even get into that.
Again, your points are all absolutely right on. And this is really thinking about, emergencies. For example, with me, I keep my scooter in my car. So if my car gets inundated because it's in an underground garage, what do I do? Exactly.
Yeah. That's
for mobility. I mean, maybe I could use a walker, but how far could I get on foot? So again, these devices are not meant to replace your well-fitted, great seating, good positioning, or theoretically, device, but something you're more used to using, like me, that's got the power to, go over rocky terrain and jump a small curve and, go up steeper hills. Not going to do any of that, I don't think, but yet it could give me some backup mobility in a real emergency. So not ideal, but there's buzz about this. And there's also a lot of concern about quality, about warranty, about, I went to the Abilities Expo the other day and tried out one of them. It was super cheap, like a $900 scooter. Well, guess what? It didn't stop on a dime when you released the throttle. You had to use a handbrake, and it didn't go backwards. Can you imagine? It didn't go in reverse. And I'm thinking, and the battery was like tiny, like a little box, like the size smaller than this. You can't see it. Smaller than this little Kleenex box, which is a half-size box. Anyway.
Very interesting. I mean, I think, well, that tells me one thing. I need to get back out there. I did use a manual wheelchair for some time as kind of a quote unquote backup, that it just became to the point where I was no longer even maintaining it, that wasn't using it. Simply wasn't getting used, and also it just wasn't a thing. But I never thought of it as a potential for use for emergency situation. I mean, obviously I'd be giving up a lot of mobility to transfer into something like that, but it's also very important that I understand that it's okay if I'm being assisted directly by someone that's a trusted person, and I would be. It's better than no solution.
And Russell, I think that's a key point, which is a lot of these low cost power and maybe lighter weight, you definitely would need assistance. Like I would still not be able to lift it into the trunk of a car, even though it would fit much more easily than my scooter would.
Great. I'm curious, does anyone here have any thoughts about that? I think, honestly, I sense a future topic call, June. I mean, the study is great. I think I'd love to see Madison or similar experts come together to talk about, some of these mobility products too. I don't know, did anyone else here on the call have experience attending the Abilities Expo, or have you thought about these backup devices or emergency kind of mobility devices at all? Right, that tells me we need to get our AT folks over here, I think, Jim. Because this is a really great discussion. I think it's a really big overlap. All right. Okay. Well, another thing that I wanted to share with you all was the some opportunities here at one big opportunity here at CFILC. As many of you know, we have the DDAR program that helps support our independent living centers and in return our consumers statewide on a number of things, including connecting them all to this work that we're doing together, the AFN work around the state, but also providing direct support in terms of supporting people during a disaster with backup batteries and other solutions during public safety power shutoffs. But essentially all of this work doesn't, believe it or not, it doesn't happen by magic. It is the hard work of June and the team here at CFILC. And there is an opening here at CFILC for a disability disaster manager position. And I am going to post the link for this position in the chat. And then I kind of want to open it up and hear from you all, especially I know that we have a lot of independent living center partners on the call today. How are things going? I know it's maybe a little bit of a quiet time right now, but what are some of the things that are going on in your centers or in your programs?
I can elaborate a little bit more on what's going on over here at RCV here in Fresno. So definitely the traffic has been a lot slower in terms of, getting applications in and everything like that. I think it's also part of as of right now, PG&E has really been cracking down on PSPS events. And then they've really been starting up on the EPSS events. I think I was on the call yesterday. I think they said that they just had one recently. Definitely I think what we're doing here and what we're doing really good is our amount of outreach. Lately, we've been getting tons and tons more outreach events. We've been going out. I've been going out and talking about our services, DDAR and stuff like that. I'm hoping to hit more of the affected areas, the tier 2, tier 3 areas. And so, that's pretty much what we here at RCV has been doing. I think there's a question in the chat that says, that asks, what is EPSS? Just wanted to ask Russell, June, or maybe even Lisa, see if you guys have more insight on how to answer what that question right there too. So.
I think I was hoping you would be our expert, Hi. Are you familiar with what the acronym EPSS stands for?
Give me 1 second.
It's fine. So just so you all know, I'm from a systems change background, so I'm a little bit, as the facilitator of the DO network, I will honestly feel like you all here in this space, the AFN world, have your own alphabet of soup. I know my alphabets, but sometimes EPSS, PSPS even, that's relatively, I didn't know that a year ago or well, maybe I did.
I found it, it's
I can, well, I just say, I can tell you, this is Lisa, I can tell you what it is. It stands for Enhanced Power Line Safety Settings. And basically, it was initially introduced to the DDAR staffers as trip switches which have been installed across the state in at least the PG&E areas. And I believe Southern California Edison also has something similar going on, but they call it something different. So God forbid we keep everything congruent across the state and what we call things that are similar. But it's a switch that they've put on power lines so that if a tree or a bear or some other thing lays on the line, causing it a certain amount of pressure, the electricity to that circuit that it's on will turn off immediately. So if a tree was to fall and hit the line and was going to take the line down, the line would not be live by the time it hit the ground to prevent forest fires or neighborhood fires or anything, ground fires. So they're just rolling out the program, and we're starting to learn what that means as far as responsibilities and roles and how we are expected or how they need us to respond to those types of events when they happen. There were a few that happened last year, and I think I do know of one that went over 17 hours, which is a long time for somebody. It's reliant on medical devices that require power to be without power with no notice, So we are tackling that together as a unit of DDARs and other agencies that support the program, and PG&E and SCE to decide how they each want people to respond to those types of events. So I think we will be getting quite a bit more information in the months to come before we hopefully have to even embrace that. But there was a small incident of that in the area that the disability action centers work in. And I want to say part of it was Chico, part of it was in Redding, Shingle Springs, and typically Paradise and Magalia end up being part of those just out of the nature of the beast that they've experienced. They tend to be on a higher, lower threshold of something laying on the line. They have less pressure needed for that to be tripped off. So hopefully that is helpful and not, hopefully I said it okay, that people understand what I was trying to say and not using terminology that was too out there, so.
Hey, Lisa, can I just say it simply and you tell me if I got what you said? Basically, it is a power shutoff with no warning.
Correct.
That's basic. So it's, in some ways, it's like the public safety power shutoffs, only there's never warning.
There are warnings for the public safety power shutoffs. Right. There is no warning. Yeah, there is no warning for the EPSS.
Right.
Yeah, the enhanced power line safety settings. Yeah, they will happen and they will not get turned back on until somebody from PG&E goes out and investigates what the cause of that is and then decides whether something needs to be fixed or whether the line will go on. And there's no notice given to right. The public.
So in emergency language, it's the difference between a no notice event versus a short notice or long notice event.
Most definitely. Yes, you have that absolutely correct.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's not one we're looking forward to because it's going to cause some problems for a lot of the centers and the people that work in the industry. So we're going to navigate the best we can.
I think it's good. It's yes, but this is the reality of power outages in a major disaster or emergency. There won't always be any notice. So we've been trying to get them to look at this anyways. Right?
Right. Yes. And I think once they know that I wish that, and I hope that we can get through to PG&E, that when they are alerted that this circuit has gone down, that they can reach out to those people and say, this is what's happened, by text or messaging, phone calls or however they do those, en masse to those people that are impacted, because, you know, the hubs of these DDAR centers aren't going to be privy to, they cover numerous counties, and within those counties are hundreds of circuits. So they're not going to be notified until somebody calls and says, hey, my power's out, what's going on? I need a battery right now. And, you know, by the time we get there, they could have the power back on. So yeah, we're navigating that right now with PG&E and what their plan is. So as we learn more, we will make sure that we share it, at least on these calls, so that people can also share with their people.
I'm thinking from Junior, from a public policy perspective, it would be an incentive for some of us to sign up for a medical baseline program, because right now, when my power goes out, which is more often than you would think it should, there is never any communication as to what's going on, or, you know, how long it's going to take to be restored, until you hunt and hunt and hunt and talk to neighbors and call, and it's a bigger deal.
Yes, I agree with you. It's a big deal, and it's definitely raised some flags when we first heard about it, the late summer, fall-ish time last year. And they were starting to have them happen, and they were testing them. And it was like, well, if you're testing them, then you know who you're going to be tapping into. Can you please let them know that you're just testing a new system? But I understand it's a lot for everybody, but we're doing the best we can to advocate for communication during those events, of course.
That was really helpful. I mean, I learned a new thing today, and I think, you know, I'm hearing that it's probably important that we get some folks from PG&E around to help the community understand this, you know, this new, sounds like, okay, so just in my head, to kind of keep it straight, and somebody please tell me if I am way off base, PSPS, public safety power shutoffs, are kind of a managerial strategic decision, and this EPSS, or enhanced power line safety settings, are more of a technology, meaning that they're out there on the poles, the technology's on the pole, checking pressure, trying to prevent a really, you know, dramatic thing that could happen if a power line were to go down. So the EPSS is less control. It's not really it's a technology controlled situation, whereas PSPSs are a managerial decision and tactical decision.
Yeah, and you have it right. For the most part, Russell, that's exactly what it is. And the public safety power shutoffs are more driven by weather, wind, humidity, dryness, just a number of different variables, and that PG&E has people that are watching very closely and following the weather that's coming in, and they will give the centers earlier notice than they do the public technically, they supposedly, but then we end up hearing about it on the news, and then the phones start to ring because the news has gotten a hold of the information. But yeah, so those are more driven. I mean, it's managerial, but it's really based on the weather and the winds and so forth. And we did have a unique event that happened. It's referred to as a storm event, emergency storm event, in January, well, December and January, when the heavy weather came through the north and into the mountain areas of, you know, say the Tahoe region, and power was out for a very long time, and people were snowed in, and it went on for over, well, almost 3 weeks, just shy of 3 weeks long, that people were out of power which is a really long time. So the only option we had to support them was to put them in hotels, because batteries wouldn't have been an option to last that long. So there's just a number of different things that are starting to pop up for us to, as DDAR program people that we're going to be called on to support. And I quite frankly am pleased that PG&E is taking on more than just a public safety power shutoff event. That these storm events, they're starting to understand the needs of the people that use this equipment, and that it's life altering when they can't use it, and it could become an emergency situation very fast. So, yeah.
Lisa, I think there's another layer to all of this too. I mean, I am glad that PG&E and the with reluctance, maybe some of the other investor-owned utilities are starting to look at these things. I think though there's also a big role that collectively both we and the utilities play in looking at what kind of situations cause are there preventable things that we could all collectively do to help kind of make situations better. I mean, the weather events in particular, I mean, I'm not going to get into a giant political discussion, but our state is not cooling off. You know, we're getting hotter year round, and things are becoming more and more, those conditions are happening in longer and longer spans of time throughout the year. And so I hope that, also the future of not just their work, but our work too, is how do we help our community make sure that we're having a voice at the table when things are happening, so that we're not just like running into a big political battle of, the state this year, California has started limiting the ability for folks to have small gasoline powered devices. And that can be, that can also limit a person's access to a generator. So anyway, there are lots of just ripple effect things that we need to think about in terms of like, what part are we playing in shaping conversations. And I do hope that PG&E helps us understand that these new EPSS devices are intended to prevent big disasters. But maybe, as June said, maybe that I would hope already actually that when one is triggered, that when one of those shuts down a line, that it rapidly notifies PG&E, but also blasts out medical baseline warnings to everybody that's got a mobile device, within that affected area. And even a little bit beyond, even a little beyond the affected area though, so that other people know that their neighbors or others might be, having this event happen.
Yes, those conversations are definitely happening. And I do have to say that with all the work that CFILC has played in this PSPS, these events, there was some challenges with people in fire areas such as Magalia and Paradise. And those people do not want batteries. They have experienced major fires and they want to go to hotels. They don't want batteries. They don't want to have anything to plug into. They want to get the heck out. And we've been trying to explain to them that this is a PTSD issue and that we need to respect that and honor that and give that, option to them. It's their choice that they do that. And we finally did have a meeting with them last year where they did acknowledge that there is PTSD in a lot of areas that have been hit by these fires, and that they are understanding, and they're also more understanding of how these medical devices that require electricity are really life-sustaining elements of people's lives. And for any amount of time that they go down, there are some people that can become very critical and need support immediately. As to, those that use a CPAP at 2:00 in the afternoon, it's not critical, but come the evening time, if they don't have the power back on, then they need something to have to help that. So they are getting a lot of knowledge with CFILC, tapping them once a week in meetings and so forth. So I think there's some larger picture for a lot of the people that are working with us on that in a few different aspects that they had no clue about previously. So I think there's a lot that's happened in a short time that we've been doing the program.
Hey, Lisa, June, that's a really critical point about the PTSD. The other question that is adjacent to that regarding hotels, during that huge snowstorm up north there, where you relocated people to hotels, it's a question that would also involve the paradise type people or the PTSD people where there is a raging new wildfire. How do you, CFILC, help people determine, where they can go? How far away is a safe hotel? And for example, in this big snowstorm, how do they get there?
There's how do they get there, or how do they get to the hotels? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Well, there's one of two ways. Either they are able to drive themselves, and the DDAR centers have made contacts with hotels in the area. Some of them have been able to secure a reasonable rate when these things happen. What we experienced during that winter storm is that people that didn't have disabilities that were able to get out fast, they got out quick and hotels filled up. So for instance, the center that was in the Grass Valley, Nevada City area, their local hotels, some of them were available, but some of them just weren't because they were also impacted and didn't have power. Some of them have backup generators, so that's great. We try to get that information when we call the hotels that we're trying to reach across the state. But some of those people literally ended up in West Sac, and that's a long way from Grass Valley. But we had to get them to hotels that, sometimes they have animals that they need to bring with them. So we have to find hotels that have animals. There's a lot of research that's being done proactively. As it occurs, we start reaching out and trying to hold rooms as best we can. But when everybody starts leaving their homes because they know they're not going to have power for quite a long time, they also are looking for something, whether they have a device that needs power or not. There's a temperature controlled environment, in the middle of a storm like that very few people can tolerate. But also a lot of people in those areas have generators. So we are also able through this program to supply them with gift cards to cover the cost of the gas for the generators and so forth. So we have accessible transportation companies that are available for those that need that kind of assistance. And hopefully during those times, they're able to get to where these people are. Sometimes it's just not safe to even be on the road. You run across down power lines, you don't know if they're live or not. So you're not gonna, become the next problem in the middle of a crisis. So it's very tricky, but the staff did really, really amazing work during those events, and many people were served. And in fact, it's been said that since this program, started just on a whim in the fall of 2019 and became a pilot program in 2020 through the 2021 year of PSPS events. And that storm event was the most expensive event. In fact, it was more expensive than all of the events that we have been in since 2019. So all of the other events were less costly than that almost 3-week event for the needs of people to get to where they need to be.
And that,
I don't know if that helps. If that was what you were looking for, June. So
yeah, that's great, because we've been advocating from a public policy perspective that these PSPS exercises and interventions are kind of a test drills to a much longer playing, more serious, prolonged, larger scale event like you just discussed, not unlike the Ukraine, where everybody is wanting to get out, and who's kind of left behind with less resources but more needs are people with disabilities. So I think it's really good learning that we shall focus on. And what have we learned? How can we help people? Well, I was talking to people the other night, and they were talking about if they lived in the Ukraine, when would they leave? And I said, I would leave really early. I would want out of there if I could get out of there really quickly, because otherwise I don't think I'd make it.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I'm hoping that everybody's also preparing for those other events that happen in California, such as earthquakes, and those on the coast, potentially, even the tsunami that might follow that. But we have had several small tornadoes. Of course, there was a horrible one that went through Texas just a couple of days ago. I believe it was Texas. Just devastating. I saw it on the news. It was frightening, and so there's a lot of different things happening now with all these weather changes and the climate change. So we all have to be more prepared than ever. If you don't have your emergency kits put together, please get in contact with someone if you need help doing that, because things are changing awfully fast, and to try and put together something in an emergency is very confusing. So we need them done ahead of time. I'm stepping down off my platform.
Thanks. That was a really good conversation, and Alexandra, as always, has expanded us even a little bit further. So this is kind of gets back to where I was at the beginning. We want to, I think of these things as broadly as possible. I know sometimes we get kind of locked into this is about, just losing power. No, I mean, I think there's so many additional aspects, as Alexandra just, posed the question to our group. Does this group cover pandemic or COVID-19 issues? Or is that another CFILC program? I mean, I'll be honest, and my response to that question is we are all dealing with COVID-19 response. I know that on our side over at Disability Organizing Network, we were literally scrambling and pushing for a seat at the table as the state was developing on the fly recommendations, mandates, and other things. So I think the answer is, we've all of our capacity has really been in that space for quite some time. But I think that there is an important thing to ask ourselves too is, how do we not just respond to disasters, but how do we also prepare ourselves for resiliency? So what comes out of on the other side of a disaster, or even maybe in the case of COVID, during the ongoing disaster? How are we, tending to people's needs, making sure that, like Lisa said, maybe somebody decides that the losing of power, that the battery's okay, but then all of a sudden something changes, right? And then they need to get out of where they are. Especially in a fire situation, I can see where maybe a battery might be okay if there's just power loss initially, but it's not going to be okay long term. And an earthquake, as Lisa said, that's an entirely, there are so many things that happen during an earthquake. I think that, we can't really honestly fully predict. And so being ready as possible is really important, but also being prepared to what happens after, especially long after, what groups are supporting folks recovering in paradise right now for people with disabilities and that kind of thing. I know that one of the answers is definitely the ILC. I know that Disability Action Center is doing that work. this is a really good conversation. And thank you, Alexandra, for bringing up what's being called post-acute sequelae of COVID, or PASC, the long haul COVID. I think we're still, I don't want to position myself as a scientist, but I think we're still maybe a long way from understanding exactly how that's going to affect everybody, other than to know that in the disability community, we embrace people and that are experiencing a syndrome like that, and can really welcome them into what we've been doing. Anyone have any other thoughts? How can we connect these dots? Let's not leave the dots disconnected. Let's find ways to start connecting the kind of the pre-disaster, during disaster, and after disaster kind of. What would that look like?
That's a big conversation. Pre, present, and post is kind of what I'm hearing you say. And until you have the event actually happen, those lengths of time will be different in any given event, natural disaster or whatever. So that's work that DDAR is doing, and it takes a lot of minds coming together to offer their thoughts to make sure we cover every possible potential situation, and even then we're not going to get them all, So it's part of the talks, and then the DDAR, it's disability to disaster access and resources. It's not a PSPS program, although it's one of the pieces of things that we do, or that are done in that program that we support the communities with. But the storm event was exhausting, and it was a lot. And even the centers that were involved had staff that couldn't get out and be supportive of working the events, because they were also snowed in and had no power, and couldn't get out of their driveways, quite frankly. So yeah, it's a lot to take on, and I think we learned a lot from that event, and we can carry some of that experience into some of the other events that could potentially happen, and how we can triage better than possibly we have before. So I don't have a really good answer for you on that, but I'm open to hearing what the others on the call. There's several people on this call that are involved in those programs, and I would love to know what they've heard through their communities, if they're open to sharing.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I think, this meeting actually in total is really honestly one of the, we're all here because we care about the big problems, and answers sadly are not easy to come by when they're complex and changing and dynamic. But June, go ahead.
I think for me, your question, Russell, is just too overwhelming to even think about.
Right.
And I think what Lisa said about, for me, what's helpful is to break things down and how to apply the granular lessons we've learned related to, for example, that big weather event, that big snowstorm. What have we learned about contracting with hotels? What have we learned about how far people have to travel to get to a hotel, and how that's really going to work or not work when we are competing with everyone else doing the same thing? So I think there are some lessons to apply and all that. If we just take pieces of it and break it down and really begin to explore what do we need to do from an advocacy and public policy perspective, from individual planning, from the contract that CFILC has with the utilities and how they might need to be enhanced or changed in some way. So for me, it works better when I can break it down, because otherwise it's just too much.
Oh yeah, you have to break it down. I think breaking it down is the key to solving, you know, if there is a big answer, then it is that, right? You have to break it down and make sure the pieces though are part of a whole.
Right.
So anyway, Alexandra's put a really good, I think, thought-provoking, honestly, a little bit of a call to action, I think, in the chat that I tend to think is probably really good. Positioning ILCs to be a player in the open quote new normal, close quote, with appropriate funding for what is likely to be an expanded consumer base seems important. It is important for other systems not to recreate the wheel, but instead learn from the IL disability community experiences. And I think there could be no truer words spoken. So I guess maybe my question for particularly our IL partners here is, and this is kind of tied to a little bit of the discussion that you just had on topic call, June, is what are you doing? What relationships are you building to help that maybe vision be a reality? What are you doing to position your independent living center or your organization as an expert in this work? And how are you going out to, like, for example, I know here in Sacramento, we really pride ourselves on having a municipally owned utility, SMUD, but what are you doing to be present in SMUD space to say, I know we don't turn off power very often for any reason whatsoever, but what if we needed to? And also, RIL has a lot of experience, because not only do you support consumers who have SMUD, but you also support consumers who have PG&E. So you've got this experience and you've got the connections. So I'm curious as to, can anyone else on the call like talk about some relationships that they might have with local, either county or utility connections? Could also be people over at OES too, though. It's not just the utilities. I'm curious, Alexandra, do you have any, from where you were working previously, do you have any experience or thoughts about how the kind of positioning of ILCs might be accomplished, or maybe a demonstration of when it was?
I think it needs to come from the kind of a group like CFILC, which is big, which is organized, unlike most other states, you know, which is very forward thinking. And I think your voice, CFILC's voice, representing such a large number of independent living centers, would go a long way about talking about these things, just like your leadership and power. But if we have to wait until the rehab people and the other people all think that they should be playing and that the independent living centers aren't included, and for some independent living centers, it's a push. I mean, it seems in some ways that it's a national issue, not just a state issue, but with some of the issues nationally. It's like you don't want a group like ACL to come in and say, you can't do this. It's like, this is outside your scope and your 4 or 5 core services. It's like working on them now, getting into the authorizing legislation. I don't know what the legislation looks like in California, but having having your strong voice there as it's being shaped, I think is really important. And it's why I like to sit on the California calls, because you do provide such a leadership role. And I mean, for me, the bottom line on some of this stuff about the expanded services, and I'd love for June to talk about her fantasy about, you know, there's going to be, you know, when there are so many more people with disabilities, and that people are coming, that the experts are coming back to the disability community for recommendations and how things should run, and acknowledging that you've been around for so long and have gained all this experience. I think that in a lot of the players in this they don't even know what an independent living center is. And so building more of the bridges, that's been on a topic in previous calls about building those bridges, the work June does, like with health plans, but getting the stuff, we know there's going to be a new normal, and like, let's not pretend there isn't. And it's like, how do the independent living centers position themselves to be seen and recognized as the experts that you are? And there are individual examples of centers in your state and around the country, but how to get that more pulled together. And I think in some ways, the long haul COVID is a good example, especially since there's a champion for it in the Senate side, of that you can point to something concrete that's in the public, it's in the public kind of recognition of what's going on. Although I don't think anybody wants to deal with this long haul COVID, but the workshop earlier this week that National Academies and Social Security ran, because Social Security wants to know how to do determinations. And you get these doctors talking about how they're helping people do the paperwork to get an SSA determination. Getting the independent living centers and the disability community in on that. I don't know, June, is the partnership doing stuff with it, with Kane's bill?
I didn't hear your last 2 sentences.
Is the partnership doing anything with Senator Kane's bill on long haul COVID?
Yeah, I don't know about the specific bill, but there's been a lot of discussion about, what's going to rise to a definition of disability and that that kind of thing, and how long that takes to be, cemented in the policy. And that led to a discussion about the fact that, we automatically, when people fit definitions, help them to get benefits instead of help them to think about returning to or going to work. I mean, yeah, there's been tons of discussions about this, but I wanted to go back to your earlier point, Alexandra, which is one of the things I learned in observing what CFILC has done with their contract with utilities is that it's allowed them to go deep in focusing on public safety power shutoff issues. Because why? There was money. There was a contract. It wasn't the unfunded mandate of something else put on centers that are already overwhelmed with what they have to do with their existing grants and contracts. And I think we should not forget that the funding allowed better focus and better planning and better response. And we need to think about, where will that financial support come from? Because it just, that has made this work. And it might be the ugly truth, but we need to look at this.
That's why I wrote in the comments that with appropriate funding for what's likely to be an expanded consumer base.
Yes.
It's like, and getting that into, you know, the policies and the appropriation levels, I think is really critical, not just saying, oh yeah, we can do that. I listened to this 2-day workshop and it was all this stuff of, you know, I kept thinking, oh my God, I wonder if they've talked to any independent living centers. It's like people, you know, and the woman who kind of runs one of the big long haul COVID consumer networks in the country is in LA. And it's like, I'm sure that they've never thought about independent living centers or what they could bring to it. But I would be nervous from an ILC point of view, as you point out. It's like to go in and start raising your hand and saying, we can do this unless there's additional funds to do it with.
I think I really love this conversation, and I think we could probably spend probably just a full almost 2 hours just on this alone. But you know, I heard a couple of really great things, and that's that June, you know, you kind of flagged our approach with reaching out to, you know, partner with PG&E, right? You kind of go into the, you know, PG&E was kind of seen as the big bully in the room for shutting off people's powers during public safety power shutoffs. But yet CFILC, you know, we said we need access to this process that you're making. We need to be in the room and we need to be a part of it. We need to be a partner with you in this so that people are not impacted in horrendous ways and, you know, that their life is threatened. But I think there's a connection here too to the, you know, the approach that Alexandra, that you're offering. And I think you both kind of said it maybe in a way, and that's that I wish there were, you know, some executive directors in the room, but I think maybe the future looks like that, right? Like looks like partnering with the people who are working directly in these areas, right? Like not ACL, because ACL is not doing that, right? It's your local utilities. And in the case of like, I'm going to bring a different issue in just as an example. In California, CalAIM, you know, the kind of managed healthcare systems. We need to be in the front door at CalAIM policymakers, and that's not necessarily also ACL's world. It's the people who are doing the healthcare policy work. And the same with COVID probably, right? Like it's you got to be, and Alexandra, I think you pointed out a very fascinating thing, and that one of the advocates for long haul COVID is based in LA, and I'm not surprised by that at all. But yeah, you're right. They probably have never thought about ILCs because they're in their purview. They don't understand that disability for us is a movement. It's a you know, it's a culture. And I think maybe bringing that to some degree into spaces like that is very valuable, and looking to partner with, like, if there's a new patients advocate, you know, group, then we need to figure out how to welcome them. So some of that work is on our plate too. But the real answer, of course, is everybody's going to say, you know, ILCs are already overburdened and we have to find funding. So we have to find partners who actually can bring money to the table and can help us do the work too.
And that's why I posted in chat the congressional briefing on READY, which is, I always screw this up, but basically it's a bill that would strengthen the disability focus on emergencies, and to a variety of different funded programs and work groups and task forces and that kind of thing. And DERMA is the bill that would provide follow-along health care to people who are on Medicaid, who may have to evacuate across state lines, that their benefits would not cease because they had to go to Nevada or wherever, that those healthcare benefits continue with them. And there's not a big, bureaucratic mess because you crossed the state line. So these are not total fixes, but they're pieces of the puzzle that we're talking about. So anyone who's interested might want to catch that briefing next Tuesday, Wednesday at, well, our time would be 1 p.m. Pacific.
Right, thank you, Jan. That's also probably something good to send out to the listserv as well.
Yeah.
I want to spend just a minute here as we start to wrap up to talk about our listserv. The California Disaster Strategies Coalition listserv, or CA Disaster Coalition listserv, is a place where we can share information about the work that we do. I know that recently some kind of side conversations and kind of back and forths have occurred, and maybe some material that people have disagreed with. I honestly caution against using the listserv as kind of an immediate back and forth response mechanism, and always recommend that if you have that kind of, like if you want to send a message to the sender of someone who's sent messages on the listserv, kind of think through a process of like, would it be more appropriate to email that person directly? And usually, at least in my mind, on things like, especially that listserv, the answer is almost always yes. It's better to just have a direct conversation and make sure that you're not just replying to the listserv. If you hit reply, it's going to get you the listserv email address, just so you know. So happy to help people who might be new to the listserv navigate that. I'm also going to be posting the guidelines soon, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone felt supported and know that that listserv is a place of information and helpful limited discussion between our calls and meetings. And thank you to June for sharing that. I think that meeting looks really important and good and connected to what we're talking about. So I do also want to say just it's with a bit of a gratitude-filled but sad emotion that I am sad to announce that I will be leaving CFILC on the 22nd of April. So this will be the last meeting that I will be facilitating, but I know that there will be facilitation developed alongside June for the continuation of these meetings, and I'll be working with internally to make sure that we facilitate that change. And then finally, I again want to encourage everyone to share our position for the Disability Disaster Manager Program position. It is such a great opportunity. And I think that we are looking for that person who is going to be the next visionary, but also someone who's really grounded in making sure that our program is as robust as it can be. So I invite you to share that with your networks and other people that you think might be interested or are well qualified. And then June, do you have any final thoughts for us? I know you got your topic call again next month.
Believably, no, I don't.
What about others? Anything we missed or things that you'd like to see in the future? Because these spaces are really belong to you. Sorry, Zoom error there. Okay. Also, I'd like to point out that there is a survey for a SurveyMonkey link that Victor has posted in the chat, and that's a quick survey that we can get information from you about your interest in our coalition and also how to stay best connected to you and just get some feedback on how we're doing. So if there's no other comments or ideas for the future, then I hope to see you again. Or well, I will listen. I will be listening, actually. Very much know that I will still be around. I'll be watching these archives. I personally, just so you all know, I'm going to disclose this. I've done a lot more thinking about emergencies and disaster preparedness in my 2 years here than I ever thought I would be doing. And I feel like, you know, around me in Sacramento that we need more people asking questions about these things. And sometimes it can feel a little remote even when our, you know, we know that other parts of the state are dealing with big problems, but I encourage us all to think about what next steps we can take. So I appreciate the time here with you. Thank you to everyone for great conversations today. And I look forward to seeing you around. I will still be watching. So.
Bye, Russell.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye, Russell.
Bye.